So how do we integrate your on-premise Active Directory accounts, your IDs, your user IDs with Azure AD? Well, in short, it's called a directory synchronization. So you've got your on-premise Active Directory identities and directories on the left there. In fact, you might have more than just AD. You might have an HR database which synchronizes some attributes with Active Directory. You know, if you think about automation where somebody gets hired, the details go into the HR database, and from that source, which would be, you know, the sort of the primary source of information, let's say, it would have the ability via this FIM and MIM over there. These are products from Microsoft Directory Sync products. They're able to automatically provision you an AD account in your on-premise Active Directory. Now, taking that forward, the same sort of synchronization technology used in those products is used with a product called AD Connect. AD Connect sits on-premise. It runs as a virtual appliance, and it will basically, you can configure it to synchronize, you know, whatever you want, or everybody, or just a cut-down number of users, maybe just an organizational unit, or you can filter it on attribute. But once you put those objects into Directory Sync scope, that tool then synchronizes them up to your Azure Active Directory. From that point, you have an account, you have a synchronized account in Azure AD. And that synchronization is an ongoing thing then, to where, you know, if that account gets disabled on premise in your Active Directory, that disabling will get synchronized, and it would automatically disable your Azure AD account as well. So once you're in the cloud, you've got access to, you know, all these third-party applications which federate with Azure AD already, access to your applications that you deployed this morning, and any other, you know, any other resources that you might have already deployed up to the cloud. So there's three really main components of this Azure AD Connect tool. You know, and it's a pretty straightforward. You download it from your subscription, install the tool on a virtual machine on premise, and then you've got the sync services. So that's the directory sync we just spoke about, the Azure AD sync, and the FIM connector. These all sort of do, you know, that's a technology that enables that synchronization to happen. Another part of it is ADFS, which is Active Directory Federation Services. This is it's an optional part. And what ADFS gives you is basically a single sign-on. So you can use your on-premise Active Directory account, and, you know, basically once you're signed in, you're signed in. You don't have to keep re-authenticating to the cloud. And importantly, if you use ADFS, it also does not replicate your password from on-premise into your Azure Active Directory. Right? It'll actually, it's true federation. So when you log on in the cloud, it'll say, okay, who is this person? It will go and look at your ADFS service. ADFS will talk back to your domain controller, and there's a clear line of, you know, sort of separation between those services, to where, you know, the cloud doesn't know what your password is at all. We can look at that a little bit further. So there's two methods of identity in Azure AD. One is managed, and one is federated. So managed is basically, you know, you are authenticating against your Active Directory in Azure, right? Your password's synchronized up there. It's a password hash, so it's not clear text or anything, but your password's up there. So your user account's stored in AD, and there's no connection to your Active Directory servers on premise, right? There's no link there between the two. So that's great if you just want to get up and running. Maybe you don't even use Active Directory on premise, so who cares, right? You've got your your identity in Azure. That's all you might need. You know, if you're only using Office 365, so be it, right? But you're not going to get single sign-on from, you know, your devices. Let's say you wanted to use your corporate phone, or you're at the, you know, you're in the bar on Monday night and you wanted to log in and connect to your virtual machine for some reason. ADFS is going to allow you to do that. And in a federated model, like I just said, the authentication doesn't happen against your Azure AD. It's really talking back to your source Active Directory domain controllers. So there's an added sort of layer of security involved. Here, this is just showing that sort of that process. When you've got a federated environment, on the right-hand side here is your on-premise AD. Without federated identity, this is synchronizing with your password up to the cloud. Once you're in here, you've got access to all this software as a service, all these software as a service applications. If you implement ADFS, the synchronization is done via this method without the password hash sync, and it would talk about, you want to log in here to one of these applications. It would look at your Azure Active Directory. It says, hey, there's no password here. How do I authenticate this guy? And it comes back through the ADFS service, talks to your on-premise AD, and sends the token back, and away you go. Once you've got this account in the cloud, these are the roles and the inheritance, basically in a nutshell how it works. So you've got the idea of role-based access is that you sort of define a collection of permissions. That becomes the role, right? And some of the built-in roles right out of the box are owner, contributor, and reader. So think of it like, full control or read-only access, right? Those are just the built-in ones. You can generate as many different types of roles that you want. You would assign the role to a subject, be it an AD user, individual account, or an AD security group, right? So that group, you can say, okay, everybody in this HR group, I want to be able to use the resources in my HR subscription, right? So you would just individually assign those users or put them in a cut-down group and say, I want this group, they can access these particular resources. So yeah, again, pretty much anything is possible with role-based access. The scope, you can do it at the subscription level on a resource group or on an individual resource, which again, for simplicity, think about an application that you've just developed that's running as a platform as a service or a virtual machine. And then the inheritance is basically, this is how inheritance happens. So directory, subscription, resource group, resource, that's sort of the top-down inheritance levels. So just to go back to the sort of the identity management, what you're seeing now is this is basically an offering that we at Catapult do. It's called Azure Everywhere, and this is generally like this helps a customer if they've not got anything in Azure at the moment. This is basically getting you an initial foothold into Azure. Right? This is setting up your tenant, setting up a subscription, and then basically it's a deployment of 7 servers, including the AD Connect server. And what it is, it's taking your organizational on-premise AD and putting it in the cloud, including the ADFS servers. Right? So some companies already have ADFS on-premise because they wanted single sign-on before the cloud even came along, right? So now what you can do is move this ADFS service away from on-premise, or you can keep it there as well if you want and put it in the cloud. But the prime takeaway from this is that, like I said, if you're out and about somewhere, maybe you're on vacation, and you wanted to access your corporate network from your phone, you can be sitting by the pool and go to the URL, which is your ADFS service URL, over the internet, secure connection. You get to that ADFS server and it'll prompt you for you'll get to a web page, login page, and that's your organizational login page. And once you log into that, it's going to authenticate you to the domain controllers sitting in the cloud as well. They're obviously doing AD synchronization between your on-premise Active Directory and these domain controllers in Azure. And then you've really got single sign-on, from wherever, right? And this is a server pattern that allows you to do that. It's all high availability. So these two servers here are sitting behind this, which is an internal load balancer. We generally put these into an availability set, which we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But basically, that ensures that those two VMs are not sitting on the same physical server in the data center. And the web application servers at the top, these are the ones that are open to the internet. And again, these are load balanced. So you're coming in from the internet at the top there. This is basically a DMZ, so it's a separate subnet where the web application proxy servers sit. Those proxy servers are only allowed to accept traffic on port 443 for secure HTTP. And once that traffic hits there, we can then isolate your ADFS servers in this subnet and say, I only want to allow traffic from this subnet onto these servers. So, you as a hacker or a user coming in from the internet, you can't get here because this dotted line here is actually a subnet within your virtual network, and this network security between these two means that you're not, from the outside, you're not getting to anything in these two subnets. And likewise here, right? These are your domain controllers sitting in their own subnet, and we say we can accept traffic from this subnet, but we can't accept traffic directly from the DMZ, right? And the same thing applies in a three-tiered solution on-premise that you might deploy with a web-facing front end and an application tier and a SQL database, right? You would put the SQL servers here and say, I want to allow traffic from port 1433 of the application, but the web server that's getting all this traffic on port 80, he can't talk to this database at all, right? Directly. So a similar kind of concept. But this is a great way of getting you established in Azure. It gets your identities synchronized. And basically, you're ready to go then. You can start deploying solutions in Azure. You've got single sign-on. And it's, this is a pretty smooth and generally pretty swift implementation. Anyone have any questions about that? Again, this is something that is offered by Catapult. There is ExpressRoute. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's basically it's a private network connection. From you buy it, you pay a monthly service, but it's provisioned by your network provider. It's basically a private network connection. It's not going out over the internet. It's not site-to-site VPN. It's this high-performance direct link into Azure, but we'll get to that a bit later on. So that's getting your identities into the cloud. Questions? Yes?
This is not serverless. Each of these you're paying for a virtual machine for all.
Yeah, you are. So these DCs generally, I mean, it depends how big your AD is, right? But normally when I deploy these, the D1s, they're like, 1 core, 3.5 gig of RAM. I don't know what the cost is, but it's not that much, maybe $100, $150 a month each. These are highly available, right? So that's say $300 a month. Same for the ADFS and same for the web apps.
Did you say there were 7? I only see 6.
So the AD Connect server, it sits on premise. So you've got 2 web application servers, 2 ADFS, 2 DCs, and then there's this guy which sits on premise. So it's not really in the cloud here. That would be down here. But yeah, that's a good point. Maybe I should put that in the Visio. But a lot of people already have the AD Connect server if they've done an Office 365 deployment already. Yeah.
I might have been mistaken, but I thought Alonso mentioned that the native OS on the physical infrastructure is actually some Linux distro.
Well, no, I mean.
And then
so
VMs which might have Windows on top of that, or no?
Right. So no, the underlying physical servers and infrastructure that powers virtual machines here, it's Microsoft, right? So it's Hyper-V running on physical hosts. Now, you know, these are all Windows devices, of course, for this particular solution. But you know, if you wanted to have a Linux box running in any of, well, you couldn't do it with ADFS. This is all Microsoft technology, but you can have a Linux virtual machine running on a Microsoft Hyper-V host.